Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm your host, Caleb Swartz. Our goal here at Dive Deep is transformation. We aim to provide spiritually motivating and challenging conversation that compels you to action. And if you're new, we welcome you in. And if you're a longtime listener, thanks for tuning in again. Pastor Branden, thank you for giving us a bit of your time to talk today.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we explored the crucifixion this last week and looked at hours 6 to 4, really that first 3 hours of the crucifixion, which, it was heavy emotionally. If you were in the weekend services together, I think everybody was feeling it between the song set and, the video that prepared us and then your sermon that just made it really hit home. And I'm curious for yourself, as you prepared for this past weekend's message, how did your emotions play a role in how you understood or felt the crucifixion? Did they change this year as a result of something you were studying?
I'm not sure. I mean, I learned a lot of new things, the background of the criminals, maybe the placement of the cross and different commentaries reading about that, who Simon of Cyrene was. I guess I never realized we know who his kids were
right
in Acts 13. I thought that was really cool, and just that was a transforming time for him and transforming moment. I don't think I really have dug into that, but I mean, watching the Passion of the Christ, honestly, for me, really put it into perspective years ago when I was in college. I think ever since then, I haven't watched that movie since, just because I'm like, man, this is rough. And knowing he was innocent, it just makes it all the while, just one of those, it's the most important event in history. It stamped out death and it's sin and Satan. So there's always been a good reverence there for me. And so I can't say that it has stirred up any difference of emotions for me, but I just learned more about the whole situation.
Yeah. I remember watching the Passion movie as well, and just the first time watching, I haven't watched it since either. It was like so powerful as far as the imagery that was used. But I love that you brought up the Simon of Cyrene. Can we take a minute and let's just explore what must have happened there? Because like you said, you made a statement at the beginning of the message, and we'll circle back to it, that things don't happen by chance. Sure. But the fact that Simon was there must have been an outsider and somehow gets roped into this. I mean, what do you think, just as you were to imagine what happened to him afterwards, what were some of the thoughts that must have gone through his head? Where do you think he went after the crucifixion?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Scripturally, it doesn't really tell us other than picking up where his sons were. So either he was already a believer in Jesus and maybe coming through that area to maybe see him. It doesn't know. He was coming in from the countryside. So what was he doing there? We just don't know. It's a lot of inference, really. But what I like to feel happened is, he was seeing Jesus struggle. And just, I think maybe when he saw him, I mean, just think, Jesus is already half dead at this point, really, with how much he was beaten. He would have seen him nailed on the cross. Anybody who gets crucified dies. Didn't just think, 3 days later, probably still in the region. And we don't know who all the over 500 witnesses were of his resurrection. Jesus come back and, wait, Jesus, I saw you.
Right.
I helped carry your cross here.
I followed you.
There's something here, and boom, his family's changed forever.
That is incredible. You think about like generational impact too.
Yeah, and is that by chance? I don't really think so. I know God gives us free will, and so we make mistakes. He allows us to make mistakes, but I think we're all chosen for a purpose and reason. We just got to say yes.
Yeah, so let's explore that thought a little bit more, because what you stated at the beginning of the message was something along the lines of nothing happens by chance.
It's exactly what I said.
I thought so.
And I said it more times throughout.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
honestly, I said it.
Yeah.
Knowing that there would be people questioning that statement.
Right, because it begs the question.
Yes, but what I love about a good sermon, and I'm not saying this was or not, but what I love about it is on Monday you're still talking about it. And when people ask, and I was actually stopped at the well today by a couple guys, and one of them questioned that statement. And what I told him is, one, I meant for you to question it. I wanted you to be talking about it on Monday because it is still on your mind. And so we have to realize, like, a lot of people question by chance or God's will when, people are dying young. My loved one died young. They weren't cured of this disease or this disease. You're telling me that God ordained that.
Right, which is where that question always goes.
Right, which is that statement alludes itself to that conclusion. But what I told them is we first have to understand that God didn't create us for death. He created us perfect in perfect union with him and communion with him. We're the ones that chose death. So we can't blame anything on God.
Right.
And we can't try to play God to say, if you're God, remember that in the sermon, if you're God, then this. And that's when you think of the universe and you think it all happened by chance and not by an intelligent designer with purpose, how are you going to live? Everything's chance. I mean, there's no purpose to us all. We were just all happenstance. Your focus kind of changes in the decisions you make. Really, you kind of live for this life and setting up a legacy now, which is good. But when you go into a mindset of, oh, this is all by chance, there's almost no hope in that. There's no hope of redemption. There's no thought of, okay, this happened for a purpose and for a reason, or I'm here for a purpose or reason. So there's something that can come out of this, versus if this is all by chance, I'm going to look at a situation as woe is me. And so that statement, I didn't say it to be theological. I said it more of focus and mindset. Where you're focused at is, if I know this has a purpose and I know this happened for a reason, what is God teaching me through this? Then I'm going to react to that situation a lot differently than saying, well, it happened. If you think of it happened by chance, you're going to react differently if it's on purpose.
Right. I hear there's a lot of depth in that response, especially that idea of if we live by chance, then all bad that happens is just by chance, versus if we live for a purpose, for God's purpose, then we understand that in everything, even if it's a bad thing that happened, there can be redemption through it so that good can come out of it.
I think so. I mean, God said he can take any situation and use it for the good for those who trust him.
Right. Yeah. And I can attest to that personally. I mean, I lost my sister when she was 18. I was 12, and that was very, very challenging. But it forced me to start to question things and to start to explore, well, what is life like after this here and now? Right. And I have no doubt that that journey through grief, as anybody that's lost anyone understands, like, you continue to re-explore that loss all through your life. It never goes away.
Right.
But it's made me who I am today. And it's forced me to really dive in and understand things in much deeper ways. And it was hard. It was not I wouldn't call it a good thing to have lost her, but a lot of good has come out of my life from watching that happen and from walking through that.
Yeah, the decision you made didn't destroy you. It helped you.
Right.
And I think that's the difference of seeing it, is if everything is by chance, then a lot of times it's probably going to destroy you, or you're going to have destructive habits. But if it's by purpose and you can look at any situation with purpose of, listen, this happened for a reason. This isn't just happenstance. Why? You're going to lean into God more. Yeah. What are you trying to teach me through this?
Yeah, and I hope people realize that there's not a neutral ground in that. You either lean into what is God trying to do through this and how can I help in partnering with him, or you reject him and deny him and say it's all his fault. Even people that don't follow God will blame God when bad things happen in their life.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. They automatically, as human beings, I think our fallen nature we just automatically want to point a finger and blame something or somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And so this
Exactly.
this idea, though, that, of course, your original statement, God's will was for us to be perfect as he designed us.
His will wasn't death for us.
Right. We chose that. And so therefore there is something to blame, I guess.
It's our fallen nature, but then there's hope too, because one day we will return. Now, when those things happen and you choose to see it with purpose, it doesn't mean you still don't cry out.
Right.
Or you still don't throw things against your wall because you're ticked off about it, or you don't. It's just, you can still act that way. I mean, we have emotions. We can be sad. Jesus cried and he wept over sad situations. We can do that too, but it's just the reaction behind it, not to cause us to not believe in God and not to lean into God and maybe some of these other vices that we can get caught up in. That's the difference where we need to stay away from that. Right.
Absolutely. So I thought it was really interesting, kind of as we're talking about the way that people respond to how they view what God's will is in life. You'd mentioned the Zealots, and I thought that was fascinating because as you were talking about just the fact that there were different groups of people that believed they were called to act differently in preparation for the Messiah coming. And you had these Zealots who we would probably label as extremists in today's language.
Yes.
There seems to be a similar breakdown of groups of folks, even in our current culture. I'm guessing this is all through time. But I guess what my question would be, do you think that God still uses all of these different groups in their varied means of action to bring his will about?
I think he certainly can.
Okay.
I think God can use anything and anyone to accomplish his will. That's a very loaded question for sure.
Sure, and I'm not trying to trap you, of course.
No, it's great. It's good. Do I think that God uses all these groups and their varied means to bring his will?
Look at the Zealots, for example. If that group, that kind of extremist group, ended up being to the criminals that were on the cross, and of course, there's a lot of conjecture here because we don't know for sure.
Well, but Josephus did write about those two criminals, and the word he used would say they were freedom fighters, part of the Zealots who were acting this. So we can know for sure through Josephus and his writings that these guys were them.
Yeah, so if they were tied to that original group of Zealots that formed so long ago, like Maccabean Revolt era, right? Did God use all of that? Even if they didn't do good things, right? Let's just say, okay, they might have acted in a way that was not ideal, but he used their story, their lives, to glorify himself through that conversation on the crosses.
I don't think he used them. I think he corrected them.
Okay.
Like the Essenes were another sect group, but they went off and said, we want no part of the Roman government. So they went off into the hills, and they're actually the reasons why we have the Dead Sea Scrolls and the new Dead Sea Scrolls that we just were able to find. They hid all of them.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want Rome to have any of their writings. And so, we can thank them, their sect, but people like the Zealots, I think, Jesus' message is peace, not violence. So I think he can correct more than use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
But another thing is God is without time. So God already knows how it ends. His will be accomplished because to him it's already there. We just don't understand God in this aspect of stepping out of time. God is bigger.
Right.
So does he use, or does he already know what's going to happen as a result of our free will?
Well, that'll be part 2 of the podcast, exploring that question. Any final comments to listeners today?
I would just say this: if you're anywhere and you're struggling with different events that have happened in your life, lean into them. Keep seeking God, and He'll show you a path forward and a way out of your situation. But just keep leaning into Him, and He'll show you the right path.
Well, thanks, Pastor Branden, for your insight.
Of course.
And thank you all for connecting with us today on CWC Dive Deep. We want to answer the questions that are on your mind, and so we encourage you to submit a question by going to cwc.life/dive-deep. If you benefit from this podcast, then spread the word and tell others about it. Join us next week as we continue in our series, The Last 24. And if you missed past episodes, check those out at cwc.life. Have a great week.